There's a new car coming for Formula 1 2022, massive changes to the regulations, and the car looks great, but what does it mean for the racing? That's what we're going to have a look at today. Some examples of where we might see changes in racing from this year to next year, and how it might be spiced up a bit. So a big focus for next year's car is on aerodynamics. The aerodynamics are so important on a Formula 1 car, and what we've got right now, they're incredible. The downforce the cars are generating is mind-boggling. The clean airflow over the car, squashing the car down into the asphalt with downforce, means that they can go at such high speeds around some pretty tight corners. But what the focus is on for next year is to make sure that you don't need that clean airflow. It's not so crucial to go quick, which means that cars behind are going to be able to follow each other a little bit closer. So what do we mean by clean air and what do we mean by dirty air? Well, clean air is a car on its own, driving into the air. It's the normal static airflow, and it's that which cars are designed around at the moment. They're designed to be as fast as they can on their own. You have the airflow over the car, all those bits of carbon fibre that are in the most precise of places that the teams design are there because of the static airflow, the clean air that they're expected to get. Dirty air we talk about is air that comes off the wake of a car ahead. So if you're following a car ahead, you're not getting clean air, you're not getting the expected airflow that the cars are actually designed around. You're getting airflow that's really disrupted by the car ahead, and therefore all those carbon fibre surfaces that you're wanting the airflow to go over, they're not necessarily being hit at the right moments, and you're losing downforce. There's been a big push for 2022's car to have cars follow each other much more closely. So the design for next year's car is based on simulations on two factors, not just a car running in clean air, but it's focused on, firstly, reducing the wake of the car ahead. So when cars are following each other, can you limit the disruption to the airflow that the car ahead is producing? Secondly, can you limit the sensitivity of the second car to that disruption in the airflow? So it's twofold really, reducing the wake off the back of the first car. Secondly, the second car, making sure the disrupted wake doesn't make such a big difference as it does in this year's 2021 car. Now, the numbers that we're getting from this are really, really impressive so far. Currently, from 20 metres back, a following car is losing 35% of its downforce from this dirty air effect, whereas next year's car is projected to be less than 4%. It's a huge increase in downforce that they'll get at 20 metres further back, which will help the cars to close in closer and not get to about 3 seconds back and face this dirty air problem and struggle to get right in towards the DRS zone. At 10 metres further back, when they're getting a bit closer, currently it's 46% of downforce that the car behind is losing. It's huge, and that's why it's very difficult to punch your way into the DRS zone. For next year, that's coming down to 18%, which is a massive decrease as well, and should all allow cars to follow each other more closely. But these are the numbers that we expect. They might not necessarily be hit, because this is what Formula 1 has put together as the expected plan. But when the teams get all the data, they get all the parameters and the regulations through, they're going to be finding ways to compete with each other and to find little bits of trickery here or there that might make those numbers a little bit different when we get racing in 2022, because they're searching for a competitive advantage and maybe coming up with some innovations as well. But nonetheless, the numbers are so different that it's going to affect racing drastically. So what might we see then with this new 2022 car? Well, there's plenty of examples of cars struggling to follow each other with dirty air at the moment. There's examples most weekends. This here is the perfect example of dirty air. Sebastian Vettel's racing with Esteban Ocon at this season's Bahrain Grand Prix. And Ocon's about to come through. There he goes in the blue Alpine on the left-hand side. Now Vettel's just trying to get back to the racing line to have a chance to fight back at the next corner. But as he goes, he's tucking in, it's all looking okay, he's under control. But look, as soon as he tucks in behind the Alpine directly, he gets the dirty air. So when he's out wide, it's okay, he has the clean airflow over his car. But in this position, it's disastrous for a Formula 1 car because you're right in behind another car, the airflow's all over the place. So all that simulation that you've done to design these perfect parts really goes out of the window. Vettel's picked up the dirty air, no downforce anymore, locks up that left front. You can see right there, that is locked solid. And as we play it through, smoke coming off it as it's locked, and he rams into the back of Esteban Ocon in a mistake that doesn't look that great on Sebastian Vettel, but it's just simply a factor of dirty air in that instance. There's a big one in 2019, the Baku race, where Bottas and Hamilton, Mercedes teammates, were side by side for the opening few corners. It was a thrilling duel between Hamilton trying to get ahead of Bottas, but he couldn't. The rest of the race then is spent in this sort of position. He's close, but not close enough to make a move on his teammate. And he's just struggling to punch that hole through the dirty air and pick up enough of a slipstream on a circuit that's actually one of the easier ones to overtake on with a really long straight. So if we take the two of them here, you can see the gap is maybe approximately 20 metres that Hamilton is behind Valtteri Bottas here. And it's fluctuating corner to corner and depending on the straight line speed. But here, Hamilton's going to have about 30% more downforce than he had in this 2019 Grand Prix, which would mean he could just go quicker for longer, get right up to the back of Bottas. And whilst here it's just frustrating because the closer he gets, the more downforce he loses. It's a really tough position to be in to try and overtake, particularly for Hamilton in this instance, because he's up against exactly the same car. It's a Mercedes against a Mercedes. There's no disparity between cornering speeds, straight line speeds. They're basically driving the same thing. And the guy behind here, Lewis Hamilton in this instance, is at a big disadvantage because he's losing all that downforce. For next year's car, that downforce loss will be nowhere near as much. So if Hamilton, as he was in this case, is the faster driver, he'll be able to close into the back of Bottas, and hopefully we'll see some thrilling wheel-to-wheel action between teammates like we did with Hamilton and his teammate in the previous era, Nico Rosberg, when they went wheel-to-wheel a number of times. Another big race in the 2019 season was the Canadian Grand Prix. And again, we've got Hamilton on the attack, following Sebastian Vettel in what is going to be a huge moment in the season in Formula One. But Vettel, coming into turn 3, is under pressure from Hamilton. But again, Lewis is stuck at this range. He's about a second back, just trying to get into DRS range, but not close enough to make a move. But he's close enough to put pressure on Vettel. In this instance, though, look at Vettel. We've got Seb in the red Ferrari, and we've got back markers coming up here. So for once, Hamilton's not the only driver in this Grand Prix that's got the dirty air. He's in second. He's been chasing Vettel, who's in first, and had clean air the whole time. But here, Vettel catches a bit of dirty air from the back markers and has a big oversteer, loses a bit of downforce himself, goes across the grass, and the rest is history. Gets really tight with Hamilton, doesn't let him through, picks up a 5-second penalty for that, and the race is kind of nullified at this point because still, whilst Hamilton is right behind Vettel, he can't quite get close enough to make a move on the Ferrari driver, and now he knows he absolutely doesn't need to because Vettel has a 5-second penalty. He could just sit in that range, and that decision kind of ended the Grand Prix here, much to the frustration of a lot of fans. So this one, in this Grand Prix, it's twofold. Firstly, catching the dirty air in front affected Sebastian Vettel, and it cost him the race here. When he was in the lead, he made that mistake and ended up incurring the penalty. So not only did it cost Vettel the Grand Prix, but it cost the spectator maybe the Grand Prix as well, because in 2022's rules, maybe Vettel doesn't catch the dirty air and we have just a good tussle between Hamilton and Vettel, because not only does Vettel not catch the dirty air, but Hamilton has reduced dirty air the whole way through the race, can get closer to Vettel, and the old adversaries have a brilliant scrap. We can see what happened really on the track. So that's a couple of examples of where we hopefully will see race-defining battles right at the front. But what about the circuits? How are they going to change? There's going to be new overtaking places, I think, with the reduced dirty air effect. And one of those places is going to be Japan, I think, which has got lots of long, fast corners that are very difficult to follow through in this generation of Formula One car. And if we have a look at previous years, there's been overtakes at a corner that you couldn't dream of overtaking now. Coming out of the Degners, we got Sergio Perez and Pastor Maldonado back in 2011. And it's an audacious move that Perez is going to try. Look how close he is, though, coming out of the Degner corners. He's right on the tail of Maldonado, and that's through two right-handers that you'd never normally be able to follow through. This is with Pirelli tyres going away a little bit, maybe, and Perez on a great charge, but nonetheless, he's right on the back of Maldonado. And that's something that in recent years has not been possible with the downforce we've been generating in Formula One. So Perez comes into the hairpin, Maldonado has to defend it, Perez goes to the outside and can't make it through there, but gets a switchback and front end again sharp as he tucks in behind Maldonado and he's straight through on the exit, and they're going to run up to Spoon Curve as well. Pasta trying to get back on Checo, but the Sauber in that instance was too quick. It's an overtaking place we haven't really seen in Formula One for many a year, but it used to be quite a good one back in the day, and maybe next season it will be again. Also in Japan, you've got the final chicane, which has become much harder to overtake on as well, because the following spoon curves. After this curve, they come into two left-handers that are very quick, and then a long straight into 130R flat out, and then the final chicane. Lewis Hamilton tried a move on Max Verstappen right at the death in 2016 that was potentially season-defining for him there, as he couldn't make it through and handed the advantage to Nico Rosberg in the championship. Possibly, with the reduced dirty air effect, Hamilton might have been able to react differently to Verstappen's late move across on the brakes. It might not have been so catastrophic, and we could see this battle rage on for a few more corners. And we've got some tracks on the calendar that are notoriously hard to pass. They're going to be the ones that maybe benefit the most from this. And an example of this was the 2018 Australian Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton put it on pole by a good chunk in Melbourne in 2018 in the Mercedes against Sebastian Vettel in their peak of their rivalry. And the race was undone for Mercedes when they misjudged a safety car call. Sebastian Vettel and Ferrari just about ended up ahead of Mercedes when they pitted. And for the rest of the race, it was like this. Hamilton charging down on Vettel, but there was no way through on a circuit that's not that easy to overtake. Now, there's actually changes being made to the Albert Park circuit, which should hopefully help overtaking anyway. But even forgetting the changes to the cars will make a big difference. So it's twofold at a circuit like Albert Park. Here, you could just see Hamilton stuck in behind Vettel, and as he got closer, he made more mistakes because he lost that bit of downforce. But this section particularly, very tricky for Lewis to follow through. Vettel with the clean air, Hamilton with the dirty air, and he was just frustratingly kept at arm's length. Melbourne is the perfect track that hopefully can benefit from this rule change. Monaco, very hard to overtake, but we did used to see more overtakes than we've had in recent years, particularly down in the chicane and sometimes at the Lowe's hairpin as well, where cars could follow each other more closely. Perversely, even Monza is one that's going to benefit. Monza's actually become quite hard to overtake on because it's difficult to follow through Ascari and Parabolica. The downforce is so low that the wings are trimmed out, the slipstream's less effective, and the DRS is much less effective as well. So cars are now going to be able to follow each other through Ascari and Monza, get better exits, and we're going to see less, probably, of this frustrating drive from Lewis Hamilton on the back of Charles Leclerc. Even with DRS, he's not quite close enough to the Ferrari driver, but he did once again force him into a mistake. Leclerc cuts across there at turn one, and Hamilton manages to get the run. Frustratingly, Lewis couldn't make it through. This was a race where Hamilton really had one key chance to overtake, and Leclerc forced him slightly wide into this corner. And on this lap, now he's charging again. He just can't quite make it through against a Ferrari that had really good straight line speed. The Mercedes' strength at this time wasn't in straight line speed, it was in cornering speeds, but they couldn't use it because as soon as they got closer, they lost all that downforce and it was negated. So Ferrari kept the advantage of the straights, and because Mercedes lost their big advantage, it handed Leclerc a great chance to win on Ferrari's home soil. Are we going to see battles go for longer in 2022? I'd love to see battles that last more than just one corner. We like to see a brilliant overtake, but it's nice when you've got a driver fighting back through. And hopefully next year they'll have a chance to recover a lost position better than they can at the moment. This was a nice example back in 2019 once again, and it's Charles Leclerc defending from Max Verstappen at the end of the Austrian Grand Prix for the lead of the race. And it's a battle that lasted a few corners. It got everyone on the edge of our seats. Leclerc covers the inside on this occasion. Verstappen's really, really close. He's got much fresher tyres. And actually Austria is a track that right now is easier to overtake on. The dirty air effect isn't quite so bad because of the long straights and the short nature of the circuit. Verstappen's able to follow Leclerc for a few laps. Then they go side by side in a thrilling duel for the lead of the race. Verstappen up the inside, Leclerc comes back on the outside, and we have a nice scrap. And then the next lap, unfortunately, it's over as Max forces Charles off the road and takes the win. But I hope that we can have more races like this where drivers are side by side for longer, because once they're passed, it's not game over. They're not just tucked into that dirty air once again. They are, but it's less effective, and they got a chance to really recover the position once again. So hopefully, on a track like Austria, which is currently not as bad for the dirty air, hopefully we see more tracks basically in that position in 2022, and more battles that can last for maybe half a lap again. Are we going to see less team orders in 2022 as a result of these regulations? Quite possibly, but maybe if the drivers can follow each other a little bit more closely, we'll see less of that. And this was an example of recent times. It's 2018, Valtteri Bottas gifting a win to Lewis Hamilton as Hamilton's chasing the championship against Sebastian Vettel. Bottas gets out of the way in Sochi, really plays the team game, the perfect win man, he was told by Toto Wolff after this race, and Hamilton came through. And it was a bit of a bizarre feeling on the podium, because Hamilton didn't feel like he deserved the win, but he was very happy to take it and take the points in his championship challenge. And Bottas was dejected as well, because he did feel like he deserved the win, but he didn't win. So possibly next year we'll be in a position where if the guy behind is faster, they might just be able to prove it on the track. We've had this season already countless times of drivers being gifted a position. McLaren have done it both ways, with Ricciardo making way for Norris in Imola, which got Lando a podium, and it was vice versa in Barcelona. Aston Martin did it as well, with Vettel passing Lance Stroll in Portimao. We don't need really those radio messages next year, hopefully, of I'm faster than him, get him out my way. If you're faster than him, maybe you can go and just overtake him on merit. So plenty to look forward to in terms of the downforce level difference that we're going to see. We've also got cars that just look drastically different. We've got wheel fairings for the first time. We've got 18-inch wheels, which were introduced not only because they look great, but that might even tighten the pack up as well. There's a big push to do that in Formula One in 2022. Make it so there's more teams that can win. So with cars that can race each other more closely, teams that are much more even in terms of competitiveness as well, it's going to be great to see how it all unfolds in 2022.